Ka huri te ao, ka kitea ngā mata o te marama, hua mai, riko mai, tēnei tātou e hora atu nei I ngā kōrero o te ao huri ki te mata o te whenua. Welcome to Mata with me, Mihingarangi Forbes, brought to you by Te Māngai Pāho and the Public Interest Journalism Fund. Lots to talk about with our panelists, Tau Henare and Denise Roche, including the Health and Equity Adjuster, Heather Skipworth's resignation from Te Pāti Māori, and another failed attempt to establish the Kermadec Ocean Sanctuary. Tēnā hei whakarewa I ngā matapakinga I tēnei hōtaka ka aro atu tātou ki te oranga o te hunga taiohi. Oranga Tamariki is the subject of an investigation after allegations two staff engaged in inappropriate sexual behaviour with young people in two of its care and protection residences. One of the incidents came to light after the Office of the Children's Commissioner visited a youth justice facility unannounced. The Office has long been calling for the closure of Oranga Tamariki's care and protection residences, and its Commissioner Judge Eivers joins me now from Te Whanganui-a-Tara. Tēnā koe I te kai ko mihana.
Tēnā koe Mihingarangi.
You've said that these children are not safe in these residences, and that's alarming because, you know, if you think about your own children locked up in unsafe places, you'd be beside yourself. Does it keep you up at night?
I do worry about it, yes, that's true, but I guess it's really the model of care that we have for our mokopuna who are in detention. So there's two types of places. One is a care and protection residence, which is where children who, there are issues with their behaviour, which their whānau can't manage, so they're put in a residence to be assisted. And then there's also the youth offending residences. So they're dotted across the country. Look, in the main, the kaimahi that are there do care for the mokopuna, but the model of care is outmoded. It's not fit for purpose. It doesn't address the therapeutic needs of these mokopuna, which is really important. These children in rangatahi are there because something traumatic has happened to them in their lives, and it's impacted on the way they see the world, the way they see themselves, and the way they behave.
Can you describe these places, these residences, and, what kind of number of children are we talking about?
Look, we're not talking about very many. Some of the residences can take up to 40 mokopuna, some can take up to 20, but in the main, at any time, and I don't have the up-to-date statistics, there's no more than about sort of 200 perhaps in these places across the country. So they are institutions, and for me, they are prison-like. I mean, I went and have visited a couple of them now, and I know high walls, often the use of secure care. So if a mokopuna, acts out or has an issue and lashes out, they get locked in basically a cell for up to 24 hours. Now, we can do better than that, and that's not the way to treat our children. And the other issue is that many of them are a long way away. So, for example, the one down here in Wellington, when I went there to visit, many of the mokopuna are from Papakura, and they're miles away from their whānau. So they could be in not only a different part of the motu, but also a different island. They could be in the South Island residence, even though they come from the north, and that's where their whānau is. So they're prison-like.
What does that do for a tamaiti who's that far away from his mum or dad or big sisters and brothers?
Well, it's going contrary to the provisions of the Act, which is all about, the Oranga Tamariki Act is all about connecting whānau and keeping mokopuna connected to their whānau hapu iwi, and to be with their whānau as much as they can. It's also a breach of international treaties. State care intervention and care in these sorts of institutions is meant to be short term. Some of these mokopuna have been in there for over 6 months. It breaks their spirit. It's not therapeutic, and it very much diminishes their mana.
And it's unsafe, as you've found. So can you talk us through this recent case? Did the child report the abuse directly to you or someone in your team?
No, we monitor these residences regularly. It's a part of our obligations under an international treaty called the Optional Protocol Against Torture Treaty. So we go around, we make announced visits and unannounced visits to make sure that mokopuna are treated, they are not treated unkindly, inhumanely, or subject to any sort of torture. So that's that mandate. So when my team, not me personally, but when my team went into this particular residence, it was through their process of talking to staff, talking to mokopuna, just their observations, this issue arose, and that's how we found out about it.
So where to from here? I mean, you have said that Oranga Tamariki in this instance has responded swiftly, but is that your experience?
In the time that probably this is the first time that this has arisen in the time that I've been in the job. So I'm pleased, because for the safety of mokopuna, that's a good reaction or response from Oranga Tamariki. But what I would like to see, and I've said this many times, and commissioners before me have said this, these places need to close down. None of us want our child, our mokopuna, in a place that's cold, that's institutional, where if they misbehave, they get put in a cell for 24 hours, where their basketball court is a 10-foot high wall that you can't see through, it's a little bit like the ERO report, the report that came out today. These mokopuna are out of sight, out of mind, and we actually need to keep them in mind, and that will be what I'll be urging Oranga Tamariki to do. And actually the whole country needs to think about this. This is not a way to treat children who are actually our most vulnerable and our most marginalised. And unless we help these children to heal from whatever harm they have had in their very short lives, then these issues are going to continue. If people can even think more broadly, if we help these mokopuna, it just takes one child at a time to take back into their whānau, back into their community, have that whānau wrap around them with intense support from the state, because that's needed, and that's it could be a housing issue, it could be a food issue, it could be an education. Well, in fact, it's usually all of those things. And often these mokopuna don't have fathers, so they need mentors and they need good whānau members to step forward. But it needs to go. I would like to see these places closed down, and community-based models of care in smaller groups, so not 20 mokopuna altogether, but say 3 or 4, who are cared for in a whānau-like manner rather than an institutional manner. I mean, even if you don't have trauma, you put a bunch of teenagers together, what are they going to do? I mean, it's human nature. So we need to look at each child, each mokopuna as unique. Where do they come from? Who are their whānau? How can we wrap that support around them so that this mokopuna doesn't continue to have this trauma?
What's the, I guess, lots of people agree that they shouldn't be in these residences, and smaller community homes are the solution, but what's the stepping stone? How do we get there?
Well, Oranga Tamariki actually have told me that they support this. So it's a matter of really making it a priority. I think government and Oranga Tamariki leadership need to make it a priority. I accept there are barriers in the way, and some of those barriers, would you believe, are things like resource consent. People don't want, for want of a better word, troubled mokopuna living in their neighbourhood. But it's not about that. It's about looking at finding places where these mokopuna can grow. I mean, my little dream, you say, well, I can't sleep at night. I dream of these mokopuna, say, living out in the country somewhere. I'm a country kid. I know the benefits of living in the country. And they live in a house. They can go and make themselves a cheese toastie when they want. They can get on a bike and go for a ride. They can climb a tree. Toe can go and get them and take them fishing and teach them how to catch eels or snapper or whatever. But they just need a more usual life, and they need to be allowed to be children, not locked up in a prison-like institution, because that's presently what we're doing to our kids.
The Office of the Children's Commissioner was removed from having oversight over Oranga Tamariki. How big of a problem is that?
Look, initially, I suppose it's the good thing is we have this mandate under the optional protocol against torture and the Crimes Against Torture Act. So it is actually a double set of eyes. I can see that now. So that sits with the Independent Children's Monitor, which is a government agency, but their total mandate is the practices and procedures of Oranga Tamariki. The Children's Commissioner's Office mandate is this to ensure that mokopuna are safe. That's the focus. So actually there's a sort of intersect there, and we work with that office. So I'm a big believer in getting the evidence and using the evidence to inform the advocacy so that people really understand there are issues here. While that oversight was taken away, at the same time, we're still involved there and are able to work with the Independent Children's Monitor for the information that.
Are you an advocate, though, of having it returned, the oversight?
I think at this point in time, we've got a new model setting up just next week, the 1st of July, we've got the commission coming up. Look, initially, I advocated for that to be within the Children's Commissioner's Office. I think to be fair and to make sure that we do the best for our mokopuna, we have to go with this model now and work with it. I think time will tell. It will be reviewed, I think, in 3 years' time. So the good thing is, the focus or the role of the Children's Commissioner and what will be the role of the Commission is advocacy. So that's what this office can do that the Independent Children's Monitor can't do. So in fact, they're doing the deep dive, looking at practices and procedures of Oranga Tamariki. We're taking that information and the information that we obtained through the OPCAT mandate, and the good thing is that this role allows you to make a noise, to have a voice, to have a say, to highlight those issues publicly.
Kia ora, tēnā koe te kai ko mihana, me o whakaro nui ki o tātou taiuhi. Kia ora.
Tēnā koe.
Hei huri tau i ngā take nui o te wā kia whakarongo ake tātou ki te āpārangi tōranga pū o mata. Our panelists tonight are former Green MP Denise Roche and former Minister of Māori Affairs Tau Henare, both who remain in top form. Tēnā kōrua.
Kia ora.
What do you make of that, Tau? This government's came in promising that it was going to turn Oranga Tamariki into a place where our kids were going to be safe, return children to iwi. They've had a long time to do that, and we still have these situations.
Yeah, I mean, the sad thing is that traumatised kids are being traumatised again. Yeah. That's the saddest thing, when you're trying to help somebody and you're basically putting them in an environment that is unsafe. And that's just... Look, there are examples of good in our community, kahunganu, all over.
Very new though, and they had to force 3 reports for that.
And they had to fight for recognition. And why is it such a hard job to get that recognition? I mean, do you drain the swamp? Some people would say yes. Some people would say no. I think there is a time for it to be drained, and it's now.
Yeah.
And let's get on with it, because there are examples of good providers, community, iwi, hapu, whānau.
Why can't, MSD or Oranga Tamariki go off down the corridor of Parliament and talk to Megan Woods about housing and, Lynn's and all the rest of them, and just purchase a whole lot of farms and put these kids in it and set it up?
Yeah, well, that would be the obvious thing to do, is that those wraparound services that we need for those tamariki. And, as the Commissioner said, there's not that many of them, and it's become quite this inflated issue, and is frequently used for dog whistling, I have to say. But it's also part of the reason that we treat our kids like this, is because we've got such a punitive approach, and it just doesn't work. It totally doesn't work. Those wraparound services, the government will to spend some money and some resources on supporting these kids, that investment will be paid back multiple times over this generation, and they just need to get onto it.
75% of these tamariki are Maori, and that figure's even higher if you consider the tamariki who are both Maori and Pacifica together. would you expect, iwi to be involved here? Urban Māori authorities, you know?
Right across the board. Mātai waka and haukainga. You have to be involved somehow. That's the worst statistic, is that 75% are Māori. And like you say, the double up with their whanaunga from the Pacific, mate, it's our issue, not our problem. But if they want it to be our problem, well, we'll fix it as well. And all it needs is somebody in Wellington, in the Beltway, to say, yeah, I think that's a good idea, let's go for it. I mean, of course you're going to have to do some groundwork. Everything starts with a bit of groundwork, but there's networks, there are people out there that have done this since Matua Whāngai when I was 15, 16 years of age.
And thank goodness for those international treaties that allow the Office of the Commissioner in to have a look, eh?
Yeah, that oversight to make sure that tamariki is safe is crucial. But I think the whole process is not safe, and I think the Commissioner's right. They need to be shut down, and that would then generate more resources to be able to invest in these families, this whānau, our people, to make sure that they're looked after and that they can flourish, you know.
If you can find $5 million overnight for a liquidated Ruapehu ski scheme, well, I'm not arguing against it, then you can find $5 million or $10 million to do this.
Ka pai. Te Whanganui Atara played host to the National Party Conference over the weekend. The party leader was introduced as Chris, not Christopher Luxon, and says the party's making a comeback, so no surprises on the key policies. Actually, the sharp end of what we're just talking about. Longer sentences, tougher on crime, more support for victims, cost of living. But there's been a bit of a pushback. Some judges are best saying that judges are best suited to determine lengths of sentences and any tweaks and changes to the justice system. Who are the experts here? What do you think? You've been the Minister of Māori Affairs.
Yeah, and the expert is the Minister. At the end of the day, because the buck stops with that person. You know, look, lawyers can protect their own field, judges can protect their own fields, but at the end of the day, it's the Minister in charge, or the Cabinet, or the government that makes the calls. I mean, look, go back to the National Party Conference. The National Party Conference, every election year, it's held in Wellington. It's a time for only the National Party. This is not about somebody new. This is not about getting new members. This is about geeing up the troops, just like the Green Party does, just like the Labour Party, the Te Pāti Māori, New Zealand First have a busload of old people. You know, it's you got to understand the animal. They're not National Party's not after new people. They're after shoring up their own vote.
Do you agree? Some of the things that they want to do is remove the cultural reports that have, been a long time in train coming. Is this the place of politicians?
No, I don't think so. I think if we're serious about wanting to reduce crime, then when it comes to sentencing, we need to be looking at the whole person, right? And looking at the way to rehabilitate them. And it comes back to that point about this whole punitive approach to people, which Toe's right. They were talking to their people. Their people are really tough on law and order, but it's a hackneyed term and it doesn't work. It might work for some true blue voters, but it doesn't work for anybody else because it's outdated.
In January this year, Chris Luxon said the Māori Christopher Luxon said the Māori seats don't make a lot of sense.
Yep.
2 months later, he said, we're going to run in them. And on Saturday, the party announced their two people, Hare te hipango for te tai hauaru, Henare wa te hau for Tāmaki. Will they be pleased with this outcome?
Well, that doesn't make sense. Nah, look, the initial comment that it doesn't make sense comes from a person who just doesn't understand New Zealand. And has bugger all.
He's the leader of the party.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm saying it. Since then, he's been given a little bit of an education about who used to belong to the National Party. There are luminaries scattered throughout history, except me.
You're a luminary.
Yeah.
Luminaries that have worked inside the National Party. I was going to say he forgets, but how can you forget something that you didn't even know?
That's true. We remember, mā te reo tau. What's the strategy, do you think, for them in the Māori seats? Will they be party vote or...?
They're going for the party vote, and that's what they're doing with these candidates. It's basically just about shoring up their vote there. I mean, it's good strategy. There's nothing wrong with it, but I don't think either of these are serious contenders for the seats themselves.
No.
It's all about the party vote.
If you can pick up 2%, 3%.
I think they get higher than that in the Māori
That's
seats.
but
And particularly because New Zealand First may or may not be in the race this year, so they'll pick those up.
But regardless, whether New Zealand First has a candidate or not, they'll still pick up quite a nice little 10%, little 14% of the vote.
10 to 12, eh?
And that's good. So 3% is all right.
So is it good for the Māori seats to be so hotly contended with people interested, I guess?
Yeah, it is. It's good for voters, right? They get a real choice, and so they should have.
It begs the question: why can't we be part of the centre right? Why can't Māori be part of the centre right? And they got it. I mean, the number of Māoris out there who are actually, it struck me to be rather right wing. There's quite a lot.
To be fair, there's quite a few Māoris already in the centre, right? Winston, David Seymour, Tama Kōtaka.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
And they have somebody to vote for. Not that I would.
Ka pai. So a fierce debate took place in Parliament last week and in the media over a Māori and Pacifica inequity lever that was added to the surgery guidelines. Okay. So as we know, Māori and Pacifica have the lowest life expectancy and poorer health outcomes, but the way to address those has become a really polarising discussion. What did you make of the arguments?
Oh, I thought it was really funny. And you know why? Because if you were to take away the equity basis and based it on need, guess who comes up to top of the class? It's us. We win.
Do they? But what history proves is it doesn't work.
Well, it does, except that the word that starts with R. I mean, our system is as racist as hell when it comes to the delivery of service, even based on need. So you can go through all of that. So I think anything that helps Māoris get better through the health system because they are in need is a good system.
Is it being misunderstood or manipulated?
It's being manipulated. I mean, we've known for a long time that there is an equity in the health system, that Māori and Pacifica people are down the bottom of the queue. This hysteria about queue jumping and what have you, if you're Māori or Pacifica, is absolute rubbish. It's not the way it's ever worked, and it's not the way it's going to work. But it has been recognised that the current system hasn't worked, and that's why we've got Te Whata Ora, is because it's never worked, and it's time that it did. And we're hearing surgeons saying that ethnicity has been a consideration, and always in the way that resources are allocated. So, no, it's a beat up, it's dog whistling again. And really, I think, as a society, as a country, we need to grow up and stop doing it because it's yuck.
It might be the Māorification of New Zealand, eh? Get that? I wonder what they would have thought in 1840. Yeah, Hoskins, he talked about it.
Yeah.
Well, not that I listened.
You listened somewhere because you raised it.
It's on Twitter.
It's on Twitter. Hey, because you've talked about the Māori Party before. Heather Te Ao Skipworth's pulled out. She's pausing. What do you make of it? Hot on the heels of losing her seat.
Yeah. Oh well, gee, I would have been gone by lunchtime if they had treated me like that.
You would have had a bit of rage.
Yeah, I would have been up in arms actually. It's, I mean, I understand why, the politics of it all. I understand all of that.
What were the politics? Was it about a better chance?
Oh, it's about sticking a knife into the Labour Party. That's what it's about. It's about having an MP, ready-made MP, that could actually take you across the line at the next election.
And so we understand that there's some names popping up for we've all been waiting, actually. She's actually confirmed now, Commissioner Henare, can I say, who's from Ngāti Porou, is going to stand for Labour. Do you know much about her?
just what everyone knows. I don't know her personally, but she's a really phenomenal woman. So good on the Labor Party for getting such a high quality candidate. It's going to be a fight.
Broadcaster.
Yeah, it's going to be quite a battle, and it's going to be good for the people and that electorate as well, because they've got these really stark choices. I mean, part of what I see is the strategy of putting Meka into that role with Te Pāti Māori is also to drive up the party vote, whereas I think the Labor Party candidate's going to have a good chance of taking the seat.
Game on now?
Oh, game on, yeah, game on. She's a top-notch sports person as well. So, you know, it doesn't matter whether she's a good journalist or not.
Journalists are important too.
Well, she's going to be a great communicator if she's a journalist. But let's talk about, there's two, Nanaia Mahuta and Soraya Peggy Mason have announced that they won't go on the list.
Yeah.
I guess Nanaia looks like she'll be fine. How do you think Soraya will go in Te Tauhauaru? There's big names in there.
Yeah, big call for her down there because she's up against it. All the polls have Debbie a little bit ahead, not by a whole lot, but she's ahead. She got a bigger profile. With Nanaia, she's cruising. Yeah, nobody going to beat her.
I've completely run out of having a wānanga about the Kermadec, so I'll just give you a quick question. What did the government do wrong?
They didn't involve Māori. Iwi Māori. And I think there's a multitude of iwi Māori voices that need to be taken into consideration, but there's very little trust of Department of Conservation. I think that's what.
Can they get there?
Yeah, they can, but I think it's right. It's got to be Māori led.
Is that what happened?
Maybe what the Māori side should do is design something and then say, here's the go. Let's do this.
Have they not already?
Instead of being told, let's do this.
Have they not already? I'm sure Ngāti Kuri has their own environment plan.
I think what's happened up until now is let's work together.
Yeah.
You know, but at the end of the day, we all know that let's work together means we will design it.
Yes, well, the government certainly knows now, after being told. Ngā manaki tanga tēnā kōrua, mō o kōrua kōrero I tēnei rā, I whakarangatira I tō tātai pai. Ngā manaki tanga o te wā kia koutou, tērā te mātahi o te tau e kainamu mai nei, ko ngā mata o te ariki tāwhiri mātia, kōreko mai. Ka nui te mihi ki te puna whakatongarewa me te Māngai Pāho. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back in a fortnight. Noho mai rā.
Ko te reo, te take.